Hey guys, I'm Combat Craig, and today we're talking about filing VA claims for PACT Act presumptive conditions. I want to go over a couple things for you to keep in mind and then explain what the deadline's all about and what the PACT Act is. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp at combatcraig.com. And if you need medical evidence, like a diagnosis, symptoms, or a nexus, email my med team. There's a link in the description below. Is there a deadline for filing a VA claim for PACT Act presumptive conditions? No, there's not. There is no deadline to apply for PACT Act benefits. If you apply for PACT Act related benefits before August 9th, 2023, coming up here in a couple weeks, your benefits may be backdated to August 10th, 2022, which is when the bill was signed into law, when the PACT Act came into effect. That's what you're seeing out there right now on the internet and stuff, like file, there's a deadline. So the deadline part is only so you could get that year of back pay. Don't rush. Don't do it wrong. Don't just do it because your buddy told you to do it. Understand what you're doing and what the risks are before you go do it. So that's what they're referring to about the deadline. There will never be an end date for filing a claim for presumptive service connection under the PACT Act. It's never going to happen. It's in law. They'd have to reverse the law. So you could file a claim whenever you want, a PACT Act presumptive claim at any time in the future. No deadline. When a new law creates a new entitlement or changes eligibility, there's a 1-year period that allows a veteran to file a claim under the new law and possibly get retroactive benefits back to the date that the law became a law. In this case, it's August 10th, 2022. If a veteran is diagnosed with one of the presumptive conditions, has a qualifying service, right? You're in this place at this time, and it's on the presumptive list. And you should look at this and know this. We communicate on YouTube and all sorts of ways. Just because I may qualify for a PACT Act presumptive condition doesn't mean you're going to. I have something on the list. You may or may not have something on that list. So look at that list to make sure you have a qualifying disability before you file the claim. And then the other piece is you need to be in a certain location. Were you in one of these locations? And here's the list, right? Were you there or not? So this isn't something that you should be like, well, I was kind of close to one of these places, so it should fly. I wouldn't take that approach. You're either there or you weren't. And you either have a disability that's on the presumptive condition list or you don't. Now you're filing a VA claim. You're exposing yourself to the VA, filing a claim for no reason. It's going to get denied. The disability doesn't fall under the PACT Act, or you weren't even in one of the locations that they recognize. So that's a very risky proposition doing that. If that's your situation, do it the old school way. Current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus. And again, if you need help with any of that stuff, reach out to my med team. There's an email address in the description. Make sure you have the medical evidence in your file in a medical record before you file the claim. So there's 3 components to establish service connection. I talk a lot about secondaries and direct service connection. Presumptive service connection is one of the ways that you could go. When you're filing a presumptive service connection claim, the presumptive nature of the claim replaces the nexus. So you have to worry about a current diagnosis and current symptoms. So you need to have a current diagnosis. You looked at the list, you're in this spot, and you have this condition, it's on the list. You need to have an actual diagnosis for it. And you don't want to wait for the C&P examiner. You're going to a C&P exam. You don't want to wait until then to maybe or maybe not get the diagnosis. Just get it in your records first. It needs to be in a medical record, written down by a doctor saying, I, so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so diagnosed you with asthma, and it's there, and it's got an ICD-10 code. Then the other part is the symptoms. So you've already won the nexus. If you have the diagnosis, you're going to win that too. Then the symptoms is where your rating comes from. So look at the CFR, see how the VA rates your condition. And a lot of this stuff on the PACT Act stuff is a lot of it's respiratory type issues. And you either have the numbers or you don't. You either can't breathe according to the VA and you qualify for a 30% rating, or you could breathe a little bit and just kind of remember, the way VA rates stuff is unfair, and that's the way it is. So if you could only breathe so much, or you could only, whatever your conditions are, if they only meet the requirements for 0% or 10%, that's what you're going to get. So you're not going to get 30, 60, 100% off of one thing if you don't meet the criteria. So make sure you go look at it. So then you get into the risk part of this. So if you're at 90%, let's say you're at 90%, which is rounded down, so you're at 87%. If you file a claim, is it actually going to move the needle on your overall rating using the combined ratings table? In this particular situation, let's say we're going for asthma and you meet the symptoms of 10%. So if you go from 87%, which is rounded up to 90, and then you win an additional 10%, you're going to go from 87 to 88, which is still rounded up to 90. So you just exposed yourself, asked the VA to roam through your records, and you got the same rating. So in my mind, that's a lot of risk for zero reward. There's a couple exceptions here when it might be beneficial, and that's DIC benefits if you die from a service-related condition. And then the other one is special monthly compensation. There's about 12 different steps of special monthly compensation. This is more for 100% disabled veterans. And now let's move on to the last part here. Should I file a PACT Act claim if I have 100% permanent and total VA disability rating? That depends. You're at the highest, right? You're at 100%. So there is no 101. You're at the highest. DIC benefits might be beneficial to you, and special monthly compensation. There's lower special monthly compensations. You're going to have to figure out the risk, your tolerance on that for yourself. And then there's ones that go up to like 10 grand a month. If this is going to really move you up into the special monthly compensations, instead of like 3,300, you're going to get 6 or 7 grand a month. That would be worth pursuing to me. But if it's for an extra $100, I wouldn't lay that $3,300 on the line. That's just me. Again, we all have different risk assessments, and my risk tolerance is pretty low with this stuff. So know what you're filing a claim for. PACT Act presumptive conditions are narrow, and most of these conditions are rated low because in order to get a higher rating, your symptoms need to be really bad to get a halfway decent rating. So make sure you understand this going in. And make sure you understand that you can get a reduction or an increase anytime you file a VA claim. I saw a stat that said the VA is only reducing about 5% of the veterans. That's too high for me, right? For 95% of veterans that file PACT Act claims and there's no consequences, that's good for them. But that 5% group, right? I fought the VA for 30 years. I always fall into that 5% group, right? If something bad could happen, it's going to happen to me. So I factor that into all of my risk assessment stuff. That's great that it's only 5%, but I for sure will end up in that 5% with a reduction. So it's not worth it to even try that for me. I already kind of know how my journey's been with the VA. I'm not messing with them until I'm protected by the 20-year rule. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp at combatcraig.com. And if you need medical evidence, like a diagnosis, symptoms, or a nexus, email my med team. There's a link in the description below.